Few series have exceeded expectations more than Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek, having inspired no less than 6 television spin-offs and 13 feature films, with even more on the way. However, the mid-2000s were an uncertain time for the franchise. On the big screen, Star Trek Nemesis, the 10th film in the series, had proven a somewhat underwhelming conclusion to the era of Star Trek The Next Generation. Meanwhile, on the small screen, Star Trek Enterprise had been cancelled after 4 seasons, bringing to an end an 18-year period in which Star Trek had consistently been on TV in one form or another. It seemed the franchise may have finally reached the end of the line. However, an 11th film, simply titled Star Trek, was eventually announced. This entry would serve as a prequel to the original series, featuring younger versions of the characters. This idea had initially been proposed during pre-production on Star Trek VI back in the early 90s. Personally, I'm glad it wasn't made then, as we wouldn't have Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, which is honestly one of my favourite films in the franchise. Those who have followed this channel from the beginning will be aware of my top 5 favourite films, or at least the fact there are 5. While this film isn't technically on the list, I do consider it the honorary 6th entry. I was incredibly excited for this film, right from the very first teaser trailer in 2008, which I maintain is a fantastic trailer.
Space. The final frontier.
In fact, I was actually allowed to take the day off school to go see the film as early as possible, and absolutely loved it. Before we begin, be warned, this video will include spoilers. In the 40+ years since the original series first aired, the crew of the USS Enterprise had become iconic characters, and the actors who portrayed them had become equally recognisable. The filmmakers new casting the film would be one of their biggest challenges. Rather than attempting to replicate the original performances, director J.J. Abrams felt the new cast should be allowed to bring a fresh approach to the characters, while still maintaining the essence of the originals. The new cast are highly talented. The various character relationships and dynamics feel genuine. Each character is given their moment to shine. Zachary Quinto arguably had the most daunting task, portraying Spock opposite the man who made the character a legend. Instead of being intimidated, however, Quinto took the opportunity to discuss the character with Leonard Nimoy, and ask his advice on playing the role. In fact, the two actors actually developed a close friendship off-screen, which made this scene in Star Trek Beyond, made after Nimoy's passing, especially touching.
I want to live as he did.
I don't think I've ever been convinced of perfect casting as quickly as I was with Carl Urban as Dr. McCoy. Within a matter of seconds on screen, he'd completely won me over.
You need a doctor.
I told you people, I don't need a doctor. Damn it, I am a doctor.
You need to get back to your seat.
I had one in the bathroom with no windows. I suffer from
now.
aviophobia. It means fear of dying.
Sir, for your own safety, sit down, or else I'll make you sit down.
Fine.
Thank you.
He somehow managed to capture DeForest Kelley's distinctive voice without slipping into parody.
I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer.
Damn it, man, I'm a doctor, not a physicist.
The film expands the role of Captain Christopher Pike. Killing off Kirk's father George, played by a pre-Thor Chris Hemsworth, allowed the writers to create a surrogate father-son dynamic between Pike and Kirk, something that was expanded on in Star Trek Into Darkness. The film also introduces a handful of new characters, such as Scotty's alien friend Keenza. The film's antagonist, Nero, essentially serves as the catalyst which brings Kirk and Spock together. The fact that Romulan is responsible for the death of one of each of their respective parents helps cement the bond between the two characters. Throughout the original series, various members of the Enterprise crew were given romantic interests, especially Kirk. However, none of the main cast ever coupled up, barring that weird subplot from Star Trek V: The Final Frontier.
Sybok has simply put us in touch with feelings that we've always been afraid to express.
I have to get back to the transporter.
No, Scotty. There's so much I want to tell you.
Maybe you could wait till I'm a wee bit stronger. I don't think I could take it in my present condition. Or yours.
Actually, the main plot of that film was pretty weird too.
What does God need with a starship?
But I digress. This film introduces a romance between Spock and Uhura. which I choose to believe was inspired by Daddy Daycare.
I love passive-aggressive losers.
Rather than feeling tacky or forced, the dynamic actually works, especially with these interpretations of the characters. Star Trek the original series is now somewhat infamous for its limited production values. Abrams knew modern audiences would have certain prejudices going into this film, so he made certain they created a Star Trek for the 21st century. It's no secret Star Trek accurately predicted various technological developments, such as mobile phones, personal computers, and FaceTime. However, while that technology may have taken inspiration from the original series, it now looked superior to it. As such, the technology featured in this film was designed to match the original series, while still feeling believably advanced to a modern audience. While I would have enjoyed seeing a more authentic recreation of the original Enterprise, on a $150 million blockbuster made over 4 decades later, that was never going to happen. That kind of specificity is why we have fan productions. Had fan productions. Despite taking place hundreds of years in the future, the film feels very real, due in no small part to the filmmakers using practical effects whenever possible. However, even the CGI seamlessly integrates into the film. Many like to criticize J.J. Abrams' use or overuse of lens flares, particularly in this film. Personally, I've never had a problem with them. In fact, I think it helps make the film visually distinct. Abrams imbues a real energy throughout. The opening scene alone is an incredible piece of filmmaking. It immediately throws you into the action while also getting you emotionally invested in the story. This is undeniably an action film. While some felt that it abandoned Star Trek's more philosophical approach, it was hardly the first film in the franchise to lean more heavily into that genre. I often hear it compared more to Star Wars than to Trek, which, frankly, I've never understood. This film is still quintessentially Star Trek. It retains the franchise's heart, its soul, its katra, if you will. It's clear the makers of this film do have a deep respect and appreciation for the lore. There are numerous nods and references to the franchise's long history, some fairly obvious.
On the test, sir, will you tell me what you did? I would really like to know.
Lieutenant, you are looking at the only Starfleet cadet who ever beat the no-win scenario.
How?
I reprogrammed the simulation so it was possible to rescue the ship.
Armed photons, prepare to fire on the Klingon warbirds.
Yes, sir.
Jim, their shields are still up.
Are they?
No, they're not.
Some more obscure.
So what kind of combat training do you have?
Fancy.
Richelieu, beware!
And some really obscure.
There's no need to be anxious. You'll do fine.
I am hardly anxious, Mother. And fine has variable definitions. Fine is unacceptable.
Do you have a message for your mother? Yes. Tell her I feel fine.
The film even acknowledged the less popular Star Trek Enterprise.
I told him that I could not only beam a grapefruit from one planet to the adjacent planet in the same system, which is easy, by the way, I could do it with a life form. So, I tested it on Admiral Archer's prize Beagle.
Something you would know if you've watched my video, Why I Love Star Trek Enterprise. Even subtle touches, such as the green blood and bruising received by young Spock after his fight, are included. The film also retains the humour prevalent throughout the entire franchise, but especially the original series.
Are you from the future?
Yeah, he is. I'm not.
Well, that's brilliant. Do they still have sandwiches there?
The filmmakers actually took the opportunity to canonize a number of Star Trek myths and legends, such as this line often attributed to Scotty.
I'm giving her all she's got, Captain!
Something the character never actually said on screen prior to this film, despite the prevalence of the so-called quote. Throughout the original series and films, Uhura's full name was never given. Fans had debated a number of suggestions over the years, but no canonical decision had ever been reached.
Uhura what?
Just Uhura.
They don't have last names in your world?
Uhura is my last name.
Well, they don't have first names in your world?
Rather than revealing it straight up, the filmmakers made the mystery of Uhura's full name a running gag throughout the film.
If you don't tell me your name, I'm gonna have to make one up. Never did get that first name.
You.
Big day tomorrow.
You're gonna fail.
Yeah, let's see you around.
Get out.
If I pass, will you tell me your first name?
No! I'll be monitoring your frequency.
Thank you, Nyota.
So our first name's Nyota?
I have no comment on the matter.
Having Leonard Nimoy deliver the iconic mantra at the end of the film was a nice way to fully pass the torch, with Spock himself essentially sending the new cast on their way.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Her ongoing mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life forms and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before.
Michael Giacchino composed the music for this film, and, unsurprisingly, did an incredible job. Though almost entirely original, his score immediately feels like Star Trek. Much like Jerry Goldsmith's music for Star Trek the Motion Picture. I didn't expect to hear Alexander Courage's original theme music when I first saw the film, considering it hadn't been heard in its entirety since the motion picture. The filmmakers wanted to include it, but felt it had to be earned. There is a subtle hint of it early in the film, after Kirk and McCoy first meet. However, it isn't until the end, once the entire crew has come together, that we hear the theme in its full glory. As with any prequel, the writers were faced with the challenge of creating tension and a sense of the unknown, when viewers were already aware of the main character's assured fates. Their solution was simple but effective.
But you say he's from the future, knows what's going to happen, then the logical thing is to be unpredictable.
You are assuming that Nero knows how events are predicted to unfold. The contrary, Nero's very presence has altered the flow of history, beginning with the attack on the USS Kelvin, culminating in the events of today, thereby creating an entire new chain of incidents that cannot be anticipated by either party.
An alternate reality.
Precisely.
Establishing an alternate timeline not only allowed them far more creative freedom than they would have otherwise had, but also assured long-term fans that the previous 4 decades of Star Trek still existed. Interestingly, alternate timelines have become quite popular in Hollywood recently. Apparently a lot of people expected the Enterprise to fall into the black hole at the end of the film and emerge back in the Prime timeline. I have to admit, that possibility never even crossed my mind when I first watched the film. In my opinion, the film achieved the impossible task of satisfying die-hard fans while also making the franchise accessible to a wider audience. Abrams successfully established his version of Star Trek, providing a way to move forward while also honouring what came before. He took something many considered old and made it brand new again. New isn't a dirty word. Granted, I do have some problems with the sequel, Star Trek Into Darkness. However, now is not the time. If you're interested in seeing a more moment-by-moment appreciation of the film, I suggest you watch CinemaWin's video, Everything Great About Star Trek. I'll put the link in the description. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on the film in the comments. Be sure to let me know if you're a lifelong Trekkie, casual fan, or even not a fan. If you liked this video, why not give it a thumbs up? Maybe share it with a friend. Or an enemy. Either way, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to see more content here on Channel 73.